Hi, this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. Well, let's do a little bit more follow-up on conflict of interest when it comes to major studies and things that you ought to know but are not being told by big media and big pharma and all the other people that are out there. When big food is behind a study, you ought to know it. Particularly, if big meat was pushing a study saying that, eating meat causes you to be healthy and live forever. Well, frankly, everybody would know that there's a direct conflict of interest. If Big Fish was running around telling you that if you ate fish at every single meal, you're going to live forever, people are going to be looking at it suspect, going, oh, well, they've got a bias. But when big processed food, companies like Nabisco, Unilever, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, when these companies push their agenda, they often run them through shell corporations. Their donations are a little bit more hidden. Like, for instance, going to the Harvard School of Public Health. See, there was a recent study that came out last week that talked about red meat would cause type 2 diabetes. Frankly, it was the most ridiculous assertion I think I've heard in a long time. It made no sense. Frankly, I cannot figure out for the life of me why no one asked a very simple, stupid question that would have made it really clear why it was such a stupid study without even digging into it. How come there's all these people right now that are going carnivore and low carb, and no one is reporting that they are suddenly becoming a type 2 diabetic after suddenly increasing their red meat consumption? Now, when they eliminate the carbs from their diet, their type 2 diabetes goes into remission or goes away. It's absolutely, all the results are showing that, hey, look, you want to get rid of your type 2 diabetes? Eat more meat, eat fewer carbs. That works. Yet, somehow the news media completely missed that one. And they never bothered checking with Dr. Willett on having any potential conflicts of interest. Does he? Well, he is a vegetarian. He has been a longtime advocate for over 30 years of pushing a plant-based diet. He is really a big believer in eating lots of grain, lots of beans, lots of vegetables. He has never been an advocate which means he's not objective. Frankly, a lot of people don't realize that there's a religious bias to a lot of these people that are nutritional guideline boards. They're Seventh-day Adventist. Seventh-day Adventist Church believes very strongly that, if you eat meat, you're going to have lustful thoughts, and if you have lustful thoughts, you can't go to heaven. So to them, it is a moral imperative that people eat lots of vegetables and not eat red meat. John Harvey Kellogg, the big guy who created, a lot of the mythology that we consider nutritional dogma to this day. He pushed the idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day with absolutely no science behind it. It made, frankly, no sense. And to boost your blood sugar by eating a bunch of sugary cereal was absolutely horrible for people's health, but he pushed it with that idea. He made a fortune utilizing this stuff. People don't realize he's a Seventh-day Adventist. He was pushing his religion on people under the guise of science. He never bothered to disclose it. A lot of the people on the board who created the nutritional guidelines were either Seventh-day Adventist or were trained at Seventh-day Adventist institutions. That's a bias, and it ought to be disclosed. Willett never discloses the fact that he's received millions of dollars from big food. Most of these are companies that have utilized subsidized grain products, vegetable oils, wheat, stuff like that. These companies survive on having cheap ingredients filling your diet. This is where, the vast majority of Americans' calories come from is from ultra-processed food. This is what Dr. Willett is pushing because guess what? He has a conflict of interest. He's making millions of dollars. His group is getting millions of dollars from big food. They're the ones who are funding these studies. It's the best science that money can buy. And frankly, it's disgusting that it's never disclosed by the media. That people just keep lapping it up. It's never disclosed in the studies. But these are serious conflicts of interest. You've probably never heard of the fact that Dr. Willett's got several diet books out there that he pushes. And he makes lots of money in royalties on it, all pushing a vegetable-based diet. He is in partnership with other people that push vegetable-based diets. There's a lot of money in pushing vegetable-based diets, believe it or not. And that's a conflict of interest. And that ought to be disclosed. But frankly, when he was part of the Eat Lancet Commission, he never felt compelled to disclose the fact that he had serious conflicts of interest. And yet, this is the stuff that we're being touted. These are the things that we're being bombarded by headlines. Frankly, I think you ought to know. If you're reading anything from Loma Linda University on health and nutrition, just immediately go Seventh-day Adventists. They've got a bias. Whether you want to believe it or not, I don't care if you're vegetarian. I don't care if you're vegan. But I want to know that that is your preference. The people that are on a lot of the dietary commission are mostly vegetable-based. That's what they eat their diet on. Yet nobody felt like it was important, when somebody actually polled them on it and said, maybe you guys eat a vegetable-based diet. And virtually all of them did. And said, well, maybe we ought to put that in as the part of the conflict of interest because this is how we eat and therefore it's going to bias our opinion. And they all said, oh, no. Look, if I'm on that commission, everybody's going to know I'm a carnivore. I have a meat bias. Everything I say is going to be looked at from having a pro-meat perspective. That's part of the deal. I don't mind it. I'm frankly kind of proud of it. I feel like a rebel because I've got a pro-meat bias. I don't hide it, but the vegetarian types do. They hide their pro-vegetarian bias, and that is giving you a lot of false information. So realize, that when you look at the disclosures, when you look at, dietary recommendations that are coming, are these people funded by Big Pharma? Are they funded by Big Food? Do they come at this from a perspective of being a vegetarian or vegan? And that makes a difference. Some of them do it for ethical reasons. Some of them do it for perceived health reasons. Frankly, I don't care. Just disclose it, but they don't. And because of that lack of disclosure, you're getting a lot of biased information. There's a lot of people in newsrooms nowadays that are younger. They're highly educated. When you look at that particular demographic, they have a tendency to have an anti-meat bias. They've been indoctrinated since an early age that meat is bad because that has been the drumbeat of health education for a long time. And as a result, we have strong anti-meat bias in almost all reporting. And it's ridiculous, but frankly, be aware of it. Be aware that there's a strong anti-meat bias, that there's a strong pro-vegetable, and there's a lot of money from Big Food who wants highly processed food because that's the stuff that has the most profit. There's not a lot of margin, believe it or not, in buying steaks. The markup on steaks is not that much. There's not a lot of profit in it except for the 5 major meat packing plants in this country. They're the ones who make a lot of money on meat. The rest of the ranchers don't make much at all, unfortunately. Farmers don't make a lot, but the people that do make a lot of money are Big Food because they can take highly subsidized ingredients, wheat, corn oils, sugar, stuff like that. These are items that are highly subsidized by your tax dollars. And they can take these cheap ingredients and make ultra processed food that is highly addictive and not very good for you. And that's what most of our diet is. And it has an effect. I mean, look, they're pushing that on our troops. That's what, the average soldier eats because they have to follow the U.S. dietary guidelines. And 70% of our troops are overweight. 3/4 of the kids from 18 to 24 are ineligible to serve because of health problems. In other words, our food guidelines aren't working. But nobody is reporting the conflict of interest that's going on behind the scenes. See, in this fight for your health, you're all alone. But thankfully, we can all be alone in this together. And hopefully now you know to look a little bit deeper into the conflict of interest that may be a little bit hidden. Look for Seventh-day Adventists. Look for big food money. That makes a difference in what you're seeing and what's being reported. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. I try to put out a new message a couple times a week. I will talk to you soon.